So hi everyone. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening. So whichever time zone you are in, thank you for joining us. So today, it's going to be a basic session on about like how you can start with a mean stack application development. So as you know in the market, earlier days, if you look at it, people will be like having skill set like front end developer and then like back end developer. So right now the trend is full stack development. So the developer, they will be developing the front end also and the back end also. So one such stack is mean stack. So let's get started. So as you all know, the mean stack is compromises of four components. So one is database, which is going to be a MongoDB here, and one is going to be the server. We are going to use Express as a server, and the for front end development we are going to use Angular, and for back end development we are going to use Node.js server. So right now, for example, we have Node.js. I have created code for you guys and already I've kept it here. So we will go through this. So let me share my screen first. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Oh, yes, Sharad. We can see your
Yeah.
screen.
Hi everyone. Okay. So let's get started. So in order to develop any application in MeanStack, so we need, for example, in order to develop any application, so we need to have some set of components. So let's define what is those set of components are. For example, we need a front end application which the user will be seeing. So this is the front end application. Like for example, it can be developed in any tech stack, Angular, React, or Vue.js. So Angular is the one which we are choosing for front end development, and front end needs to communicate with an API to get to display something in the UI. For example, if I need to take some data from a database, so I need to have an API layer which will take data from the database and show it to me. So right now, this application, we are using MongoDB as a database and then Node.js as our backend server. So let's get started how to build this simple application using this mean stack. So first, we need to have two code repositories. One is for the API and another one for the Angular application. So in previous webinars, you might have seen Thomas teaching you like how to create Express API and what the different techniques of what can be done in the API side. So similarly, we need to you can check out this tutorial like how to create a Express with lot of details. In this video, we will cover basic details of what we have done here. So actually, first in the API side, we need to take care of setting up a database first. So let me open the README document of this API. So first, what are the prerequisites for this is we need to have a Node.js installed in the system, and we need to have MongoDB up and running, and we need to have a Postman for verifying our API. So let's get started with API setup first. So already I have installed the Node.js dependencies by you doing the command npm so it will install all the Node.js dependencies. Now we need to set up our database. So generally, initial days, what we used to do is if you need to install any database server, just a second. So if we need to install any database, we need to go and install, download that setup file. It will be, for example, if you are in Windows, it will be an exe file, or if you are in Linux, it can be a Debian file, or like any format, depending on which server you are in. So this is that is a traditional way which we used to do it. But right now, you might have heard about a technology called Docker and then Docker Compose. It will simplify a lot of things for us to bring up any database or like any server. Nowadays we use Docker. So in this example, I'm going to show you how we can bring up a MongoDB using Docker Compose. So here in this repository, if you check this Docker Compose file, I have imported Mongo. I have called the Mongo image. So what this will do is it will pull the Mongo image in a container and it will bring it up for me. So in just a fraction of second, your API, whatever dependencies you need, you can bring it up. So you don't need to download anything from website and then like install it. You don't need to go through any tedious process. So here, first let's bring up the MongoDB. So the command to bring up the MongoDB database from a Docker Compose file is Docker Compose up from the directory where you have kept your Docker Compose file. So what will happen? It will bring up your MongoDB just in a fraction of seconds. So now your MongoDB is ready. You can check out what is there in it. So let me connect to the MongoDB instance. So if you check the inventory database here, so I have created one collection inventories to hold the data which we are going to store from this application. So basically we are just storing the name and the quantity here, since we are doing it as like a simple web application, simple main application. So we are focusing only on creating inserting name and then quantity, but in future you could add details like price, picture of this inventory items. So a lot of things we can do, but for the simplification purposes we are just keeping the name and quantity here. So you can check in this MongoDB that we have collection and there is some data in it. So this is first step is to set up the MongoDB that we have done right now. Then next step is to set up our API. So API setup, again, I will take you through the README document, what needs to be done so that you can follow it in your system also and then like check, okay, what is the correct way to do it. So if you would like to do the setup along with me, so just a minute, let me share the,
So Sharath, while you are setting it up, like until
yeah,
now, your first task you have been like setting up Mongo, right?
yes.
Database to, yeah.
So first step is like actually, so this is our front end in the main stack. We have 4 components. So we have to set up each and every component one by one. So first step is to set up a database for API to connect to it. So first step, I have set up the database from the Docker Compose. So if in case you would like to do it hands-on along with me, so I will share the repository URL. Just a minute in the chat window. So this is the URL for, okay, just a minute.
Sharath, we have a
Yeah.
question.
Yes.
Uh, Sisla is asking, will you talk about Docker a bit to give them brief, like,
Yeah, sure. Just a second. So Docker is a technology, so which simplifying lot of things for the developers nowadays. Like initial days when we are developing an application, what we used to do is we need to say install the dependencies ourselves. For example, you are creating an application, so we need to go to in whichever server we are working on. We need to go and then we need to deploy all the dependencies there, and for every operating system the steps will be different. For example, in a Windows system compared to a Linux system, so things were very much different. So what the Docker has been doing right now is it will create a container for us, and then like for example, if I take a sample Docker file. Oh, because I have a Docker Compose file right now. So what the Docker does is that, so it will, we have a step called containerization. So if this will run in a separate environment altogether, like for example, it will sorry, just a second. We will have sample file here itself. Okay, let me take some sample example from the internet. So actually what the Docker file, what they have done is, so you need to have a mission which should have a Node.js and MongoDB in it to run your application. So in a traditional method, if there is no Docker, what we would do? Let's take an example of a EC2 instance. So what we will do first is we need to procure an EC2 instance first. Then in the EC2 instance, it may come with like a plain Ubuntu version, let's say. So from the Ubuntu instance, you need to download the setup file of MongoDB manually, and and you have to install that MongoDB setup, and you need to verify that whether MongoDB is up and running or not. Similarly, if you want to install multiple softwares like Node.js or like MongoDB on the Java, so in every system you need to do it manually. Let's say you want to do in like 100 such systems. So assume the check the number of time it may take for you. So you have to do it the step for each and every time. You need to do in each and every mission. So in order to avoid such situation, so Docker has come up with the concept of containerization. So what you can simply do is that you will say, okay, from which, what is the operating system? So all these Docker systems will work on like a Ubuntu based or Linux based operating systems. So what you need to do, you need to define like, okay, which operating system you want to begin with, and what all steps you want to install in that in that machine, what all softwares you want to install, all those steps you can give it there. And whatever steps you want to do, if you do it, the same server, if I run or you run or anyone run from any place, the same setup will get replicated in across in all the systems. So this is the advantage we have with Docker. For example, if I am creating my API and you for that there could be a case like you have missed some dependencies in your system. So what could happen? It will run in my system. In your system, it may not be running. So then you will complain saying that okay, it's not working in my system. So in order to avoid those kind of situation, this Dockerization helps very much. So we are here in this tutorial, we are seeing the Docker Compose file, which is simply using a Docker image already created. So MongoDB providers, they have created a Mongo image, which would have already installed the Mongo. It will have MongoDB in itself. So what we are doing here is that we are taking that image. So what the Docker will do, it will pull that image from the server. It will start the instance and it will expose the MongoDB ports from the 27017, that is the port for MongoDB. It will expose the port in this instance to the outside world so that I can connect to the MongoDB directly instead of installing in my system. So if there is no Docker, ideally what I would have done is I would have need to go to MongoDB, this community website. I need to download it. Then I need to install the whatever the setup we have here. So we need to follow the steps to install the MongoDB. Then only I will be able to connect to it here. But Docker Compose, what advantage it has given me is that just by specifying the image name and you want to expose the port number, tada, it is ready for me. So now I can connect to the MongoDB for using any MongoDB clients. So does that help? I'm sorry if I'm little faster, so I will try to slow
I
down.
completely got it now. We have a question. Do you want to take it right now? Can we connect through Mongo Atlas for a database?
Yes, sure. Mongo Atlas is the MongoDB client. So right now I have not installed Mongo Atlas here. So if you'd like to install, we can install Mongo Atlas and then we can connect to a client is just an interface to a database. So it can be any interface. So I was using Robo 3D from the beginning. So that's why I got used to it just for simple operation. But I agree Atlas has a lot of advanced operations. So we can connect to MongoDB Atlas also, using MongoDB Atlas also. We
Thanks,
just need to give an URL. So here, for example, in localhost, here, when we are managing the connection, we will specify the host and the port number. So we just need to specify the address similarly in the MongoDB Atlas also. So
got it.
there,
Thanks, Sharad. I think this
okay.
this makes it pretty clear. Thank you.
So where can I check the question? I'm sorry if this is the first time I'm using like Zoom. So I'm not able to see any questions if any question is being asked or not.
It's in the chat, Sharat. If you
Okay.
if you keep the
Okay.
chat up, you would be able to see it. Like,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So there is one other question from Robinson. Is the front end Angular based? Yes. So we are developing the application using Angular. So that is the topic of like mean stack. Okay. So yeah, there will be a recording provided. So it will be hosted in the YouTube. So if you'd like to set up the application along with me, you can please check out the URLs what I have posted in the chat. So you can simply clone these URLs into your system by doing Git. If you have already installed Git in your system, you can do a Git clone, or you can download the code from this using this option, download zip file. You need to download the zip file and extract into your local directory. So now already I have cloned my repository here. So hope you guys are able to see it. The inventory API and then inventory app. So my first step of setting up MongoDB is done now. So first now MongoDB is up and running for me. Now I need to set up the API. Let's look into the README, like how to set up the API also. So for API setup, we need to first set up the MongoDB. So the first step is ensure that MongoDB is up and running. It can be either in local or like remote server. Now the next step would be like installing the project dependencies. So when we are creating a Node.js project, so all the dependencies which is required for this project is maintained in the package.json file. So generally we won't ship the node modules directory because node modules is environmental specific, and in each environment it's going to be different. For example, in Windows, if you install the same application, the node module is going to be different. So that's why we will just mention the dependencies in the package.json. In your system, you need to manually install all the dependencies. I have already installed it. You can see the node modules directory here. If you're installing yourself, so please run the command npm i and the dependencies will get installed. So the next step would be configuring our API. So for every API, there will be some variables which can be configured. So what is the advantage of having configuration is that for example, if you want to host the port API in a different port number, or if you want to specify a different MongoDB URL, so instead of hard coding it in the code, we can configure it through an environmental variable. So environment variable, either you can set it like in this, if you want to set it in a shell, so you need to do something like export some variable name equal to the value. But if you want to do it in a simpler way, so there comes the concept of .env file. So in our application code, we are using the package .env, which is which will take whatever the values you are seeing it. So whatever data you are putting in the .env file, it will move to your environment. So that is one advantage of using .env file. So right now I don't have to configure anything. The default values, whatever I have given in config default.js will work for this API. So I'm not going to change any configuration at this moment. But if you'd like to change something like a MongoDB URL, or you want to change the port number, all these things can be done by putting the value inside the .env file or settings the environmental variable in the command prompt. So 2 questions. Okay. So now next step would be to start the application. So first we have done our checklist. First, the MongoDB is up and running now, and we have installed our project dependencies. We need to verify that the configuration of the API is correct. So we have verified that there is nothing new needs to be configured now. Already we have our default configuration in this default.js file. So the next step would be to start the application. So how would we start it? So we need to start by running npm start command. So here we have two different types of starting. One is starting normally and other one is starting in development mode. So what is development mode here is that, so when you are actually developing an API, you may be you may be making some changes, let's say removing one line or adding one line, changing some variables. So at that time, if you want your system to, if you want the API to be restarted automatically, you can run in development mode. Right now, we are starting in normal, that means without non-development mode. like this can be used in production, like this same command will be used in production mode as well. So if I do npm start, it will start in production mode, so that if there is any changes, the API won't restart by itself. But if I start at development mode using node-mon, it will continuously watch my files. So if I make any changes, let's say in helper.js or logger.js, it will automatically restart my API, so that I can verify what's actually going on. So in this API, so we have, yeah, we are using MongoDB. We are running using Express server. So the code base is here. So you could check out in the GitHub also, like what is the code base, what we have done. So I will give some brief explanation of about like what we have done in this API. So in the app.js, if you see, there will be like multiple dependencies here, like usage of Lodash, config, cors. So these are the libraries which are required to for some particular functionalities. For example, in order to create an API server, we need the Express dependency. And after Express, if you want to parse the body which is being sent to the Express, we use a library called body parser. So likewise, every library which we are using in this application has its own has like a meaning, and it has like it has a value for it. So for example, if I need to use the structure of config default.js, I need to use this config library. So what this config library does is that whatever you are putting into that default.js file, that will be taken, that you can refer into a that you can refer in the code by using this config variable. So by using this kind of structure will help me in creating files like production environment, test environment. So it gives a lot of advantage for every this advantages. So this uh, library help me do that. So you by like referring like config.port. So if you want to run in a different environment, you just need to add a new file called test.js. So when the node environment is test, it will change the values automatically from that particular file. So in this API, so we are going to use Mongoose package to connect to MongoDB. So you can check in the dependencies that we'll be using Mongoose as our library to connect to MongoDB. So for if there is any database, so we need some library to connect to it. So it's like a wrapper. So instead of calling MongoDB directly, so if you use the small libraries, what it will simplify your work is that you don't need to write MongoDB queries directly. So if there is no if you don't have a mongoose, let's say, if what you need to do is that we need to write some commands like what you can see in the MongoDB console, like db.get collection, and then this inventory is fine. So you need, if there is no mongoose, we need to write commands like this. But when we use a wrapper library like mongoose, it will simplify our work. You just need to say, I need to await inventory.create. This is one is used for creating some in the creating any entry in the database. So if I need to fetch something from the database, I will simply say inventory.find. So what it will do is that it will fetch all the data from the MongoDB collection, and then it will return it to me. So this wrappers will help us speed up the development, and it will create less confusions when you are developing a very complex application also. So we are using Mongoose as a dependency here. So first, when you are using Mongoose, we need to define the models. Okay, what is the structure of data you are going to store inside the MongoDB? So basically, we are just storing two important data, which is like name and then like quantity. So name of the product and then the quantity of the product. So that I have defined it here, and you can see like in the already existing data, you will see the name and then the quantity here. So we'll look at this is the way how we have to define the models in MongoDB. And this is this code base as a separate segregation for a scalable development. For example, in future, when you are creating multiple routes, multiple models and then controllers, if you follow this code structure, it will make your development in a very clean way. So that the controller has its own job, the service layer will have its own job. So this will be a very segregated setup. So now let's move on to the Angular application first. We'll have some demo, then we can go look at the code. So first, now I have set up the MongoDB. Second step, I have set up the API. Now the third step would be to set up our front-end application. So once this is done, then we can start looking at the application and we can do some play in here and there. So now let's set up our front-end application. So the front-end is written in Angular. So the code base is here. I have shared the links in the chat. You could check there also. So here the application is created using Angular CLI. So it will create this README documents by default. We can add more details in it. So now I will begin with it. So here I have already configured it like for the API URLs and things. So if you check in the environmental file here, so we have given the API URL, the code base is written. So we will look into the detail at later, like how we have written code, what is the structure we have followed, code structure, how we are maintaining the coding standards. That we will look at later point of time. Now we will start with the demo of the application, then we will look into it. So the first step would be installing the dependencies as well. So already in this application, I have done npmi and I have installed the node module. I have installed the dependencies. Now we can start our server. So here, if you check the package.json, here again to start the application, you need to use the same command npm start. So npm start here, it will start our Angular application in development mode. So in development mode, we could see that let's wait for it to start. So it will first compile the files and convert into a format which can be displayed in the browsers. So it's building it now. Once it is built, you will see that what is the URL it's being hosted. So now the Angular server is actually live at this port 4200. Let's open it. So if you see here, this is the this is the Angular application which we have created for a simple inventory system. So could someone tell me, like in a inventory system, what kind of functionalities you would look for? Like what all things you would need. So what is actually an inventory system basically? So we can take our home kitchen also. So if you are in a family, if you are in a family of 4 or 5 members, so for every month you would need something like salt, sugar, dolls, oils. So a lot of things you would require. So if you want to track, okay, what is present right now and what you want to purchase. So what you would do in a normal home. So you will write something in the notebook or something. Okay, I have this much of quantity. Once you have consumed it, you will note it down somewhere saying, okay, I want to purchase this item. But in the industries of like who is dealing with tons and tons of loads and things, so they would need to have an inventory management software. Like this is the quantity I have right now. So if I want to consume, like let's say if I'm selling some of the quantity, I need to update an entry saying that, okay, this stock has, I have sold it. So then I need to, if the quantity is going lesser, they will put a sale order. So the same inventory system happens in shops like medical store, grocery, everywhere. You will be seeing the inventory management system. So here in a typical inventory management system, there could be a lot of functionalities, but for our simplicity, we are looking at very few functionalities only. So could someone tell me like, okay, what kind of functionalities you would look for in an inventory management system? Yeah, adding an item. So we have responses like adding an items, removing items. Yeah. So basically Santosh said, so we need to have a functionality for create, read, update, and delete. So yeah, correct. So CRUD. So CRUD is the typical standard terms which we will use in like API. So if you want to create any items or like any update any items, or if you want to consume something, so everything can be covered in the term CRUD. Create is like if you want to add a new inventory, we call it create because we are creating an entry in the database. Read is nothing but display, getting all the details from the database. And update is, if you want to update any quantity, you can do it directly. Or if you want to update in, you can update either directly or indirectly. For example, in this screen, if you update a quantity, it is a direct update. But here in the consume inventory page, if I go, let's say I have used 1 kilo of salt. Let I'm saying that if I'm updating this method, this is also an update, but this is an indirect update in the database, because here I am selecting a quantity. I can change it directly from 3 to 4 or 4 to 5. So this is a direct update of a quantity. This is an indirect update. And delete, let's say if you want to remove an item from the inventory itself, then you can delete it. Now let's begin with a simple demo here. So this is the page. Angular is a single page application, you know. So we have 3 sections in this application. One is to look at the all items in our inventory. This same page will offer you options to update a quantity. For example, this Oridal, if I want to update the quantity to, let's say 15, I can do so by changing the quantity and saving the changes. You will get an alert from the, you will see an toast here saying that the inventory has been updated. Now let's see how this actually is being updated. So just in the UI, you are seeing some button, let's say update, you are changing some quantity, and then like save changes, it's getting updated. But what is actually happening in the background? So for, this is a developer tool, which is necessary for a developer to check actually what's going on in an application. So let's inspect our network tab now. So first, let me refresh this page. So this is the page which is loaded right now. So you can check here. There is an API call to fetch the data from our API. So this is the API call to get the list of inventories from it. So the response, you could see there are only 2 items available with the name, quantity, and the ID of the product is written. We are not going displaying ID here. We are displaying only name and quantity. So that's why ID is ignored. So name and quantity, the 2 items is written. We have displayed here. If I want to update the quantity, so what I need to do in the UI, you will just select an item. You can select multiple items also. Then you will change the quantity, let's say 6 and then like 8. Then you can click on save changes. So now UI is going to send some instruction to API to make these changes. So let me click on save changes. Let's see what actually have happened. First, it will check, it will call the API to update our data. So we are doing a patch call to the API with the request payload. So with the request payload of which items needs to be updated and what is the quantity for it. Second, so what is the quantity? Whatever quantity I have entered, that is being passed here. So what is the thing is, so UI is not doing it by itself. So it is actually doing by calling the API. So internally it will maintain a state. Similarly, when you want to make any changes in the data, you need to call the API to make the update, because everything is coming from the API. So the data, if you want to update, do an update, delete, everything needs to be done by calling the API. Let's add an item and check. So here we have options to add multiple items. So if you want to add, let's say now there is no item to be added. So that's why the submit button is disabled. If you want to add more items, let's say I am adding sugar and the quantity is 5. And here I'm adding like sunflower oil and the quantity is 4, and you want to add more items, how much our items you want to add, you can keep adding. So ghee, let's say put 3. So now I am going to submit. So you now check the quantities what I have entered. Sugar is 5, sunflower oil is 4, and ghee is 3. So I am entering this quantity. I am clicking on submit. Now it has done an API call to create the entry. So whatever we have entered, so it has passed it into the API. Now go to inventory page and check. So whatever data we have entered, it has come up here. So this is possible because now the API is taking care of managing the data in the MongoDB, and it will be responsible for maintaining it, updating, deleting. So whatever you need to do, you need to do via API only. So now here, now let's go to consume inventory page. So consume is, let's say there is a function in your home, you have consumed some certain there are 6 kg of salt available with me. How much kg I have consumed? Let's put like 2 kgs. Now, if you want to add more items, hello guys, like the meeting got disconnected. Are you guys able to hear me now?
Yeah, you're back, Sharat. There
Yeah.
was a glitch, but you're back. All good.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Just a second.
No problem.
Okay. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, we can, Sharat. All good.
Yeah. Okay. So where we left is like, so this is a screen where we can add in details about the consumption of an inventory. Like I said, let's say in a family function, you have consumed certain kilogram of sugar or like anything which you want to mark an entry. So what you can do is that you can select the item and mark like, okay, how many kgs you have consumed. Likewise, how much ever items is there, whichever you have consumed, you can add it. And then let's give an option like consume items. So what it will do, it will send a request to API saying that, okay, this much of quantity is consumed. So now we can see the API URL which you are using here is different because this is a separate API call. Others a separate API call. We have get, patch, put, delete, all these things are there. So here the request payload say I have consumed like 2 kilogram of salt, 3 kilogram of sugar, and 2 kilogram of sunflower oil. So after consumption, if you go to inventory and check, you could see the number has been reduced. The same would reflect in our database also. Like whatever the quantity is given, let's say ghee is 3 here, you could check, so same ghee is 3 because the data is coming from a single source called MongoDB. So the data is fetched from API and returned to us. So this is a simple inventory system. Now let's say I want to delete an entry completely from this screen. I can select it and then click on like delete item, click on confirm. This is a confirmation prompt because sometimes user could have done something mistakenly. Also, you could have clicked on some links or some buttons. So that is why in most of the situation, we will have a confirmation prompt, whether you want to delete for sure or not. If you're sure, you can click on like delete items button. The items will get deleted. So how it is done? Again, we have a API call to delete a set of items. So it is saying, okay, delete ghee from our inventory system. So now let's refresh this one and check. So we have seen we had 5 items earlier. So now the ghee is removed so that we have only 4 items. So all these operations are taken care by API, but we are just using UI to do it because one person cannot do everything by calling something in Postman, right? So we need an UI to do it in a simpler manner. So this is how we have created the UI to maintain an inventory. So this code repository in the API code repository, you will be able to see the API, Postman collection also to call our API. So when we actually begin that UI development, so what will be there is that we will be having like only API code repository with you. So there won't be anything for in the UI to get started. So what will actually you do is that first we need to use a Postman collection to check the responses. Okay, if I'm using this, if I'm doing this API call, whether I am getting the proper data or not. So if then using the Postman collection, you will verify everything, then only we will be able to replicate this from the UI. Because at the end of the day, you need to make an API call to make any changes in the database. So in that case, first we need to learn the API response structure and the request structure by using in Postman. Then when we are developing it, then we will construct our payload like this. Okay, so using the Postman collection and the Swagger will give you an idea, okay, how the API is going to work, what kind of request payload or like any parameters it will expect, and what is going to be response. So based on this response only, you can decide, okay, how should I create my components. Now let's look at our UI component, UI code. But before that, I would like to ask, do you have any questions in this demo which you have seen? Yeah, so there is a question, how does Swagger and then the Postman relate? Yeah, okay. So Swagger is something which is used to display to the user, okay, what is going to the, what API is going to do. For example, let's take a simple example from the internet itself. Okay, this is something from a different project. Let me open an incognito tab. So by default, the Swagger will, they will be using some pet store, the pet store Swagger file. So are you guys able to see this one?
Can you, Sharad, can you increase the font of the editor a bit?
So I need to zoom it.
I think, yeah, this works. This works. Thank you.
Can you see it? Yeah. So here, let's say how a typical API development works. Okay. So before even we see the Postman, the Postman collection is to call your API, correct? So before the Postman collection can be used only when an API is developed and ready for triggering it. So, but before even you develop an API, first there is a phase called architecture phase. So what architects will do, first they will decide upon a structure like, okay, your API needs to be developed using like Node.js or Java or whatever it is. They will define an architecture and they will say you need to create an endpoint like this. The endpoint should be named as slash, the endpoint should be named as a pet, and it should be a post operation. So Swagger is used in a phase when at the time of architecting your API, not at that, no, it will be available before the API development also. Also, this is language agnostic. That means whether you develop your API in Java or Node.js, Perl, Python, whatever it is, you can develop your API in like anything. Okay, but this will say you what kind of endpoints you need to expose, what is the request body, what is the response structure. All those things are captured here. So using this only, you will develop your API. Because what happens when you don't define your structure in beforehand, then at the time of development you keep changing the response structure name. Let's say instead of like pet, I will put like pets, and instead of category I will put something like type. So in order to avoid those kind of confusion, before developing an API, in most of the organization they will create the Swagger file first, that is defining how your API response and request should look like. After that only, you will go with an API development. In a better example, let's say you are creating a website, okay. Without creating a design, will we start working on developing this application, the UI? Will that come out well? Most of the time it won't be, because for a complex application, first we need to define a design. Okay, the page should look like this, you need to put a drop down box here. So before creating this web page itself, they would have thought, okay, the menu bar should come here and that should be a black space. So we will define for a front end, what we will do is that we will create a design in a sketch file or like Photoshop or like anything like Adobe XD or something. Then using that as a reference, we will develop our front end. For a back end, such kind of design is called Swagger. So in the Swagger, we will define what should be the endpoint URLs, what is the request payload, what should be the parameter name. All those things are captured in Swagger, and following it, I will develop my API. Is that clear, Santosh? Okay, yeah, thanks. Second, next question. Delete operation should be done with ID. Okay, hi Bharat. So here, so delete operation, there are two types. So one is if you are doing a delete of a single record, you can do delete by ID. in the rest, in the rest URL itself, in the path parameter, we will pass the ID and then we can delete it. But in our scenario, in this example, I am showing a concept of deleting multiple items. So that is why we are using the body to pass the array of items, and it is supported. Actually, the RFC of this for this delete operation, they are saying the optionally you can pass an body to an delete request. So that is still supported, but more in most of the cases we may not be seeing a place where body is being passed, but it is not prohibited. It is still allowed. You can do it considering certain scenarios. Next one, what is the use of it? Okay, yeah. So what is the use of Postman? Okay, now the Postman here. So let's see, I have created my API. So my API code is sitting here. Okay, so the API will expose some of the endpoints which you can see here. So the API is exposing these 5 endpoints like API v1 inventories. So if you call this endpoint, there is some operation happening in the API. Okay, so if you want to test, okay, the APIs, you need some method, right? You need to pass that what is that request body, and then like you need to pass like parameters. So in olden days, what people will do is that they will use a tool called curl. So if you do a curl call to the API, it will return the response. So it was a tedious process when there is no development tool exist. So if you do a curl to HTTP localhost 3535 API inventories, you could see here, it will return the response what I have seen in the Postman. But don't you think that this is a very complicated way to check whether an API is working properly or not? Because you need to do everything manually. And if someone else needs to, if you want to pass this API to someone and they want to check your API, so they have to again type this commands manually or copy paste whatever you have given. And there is no way to format this JSON also. Either you need to copy it and then paste it in a browser and then check. So it will create a lot of complication. In order to ease your development process, we are using some tools like Postman, which will ease your life during development. So here I can copy it, I can give away this Postman collection and then the Postman environment file to someone. So you can, if you once you import it, you can call the API directly. So I have given examples of, okay, how the request body should look like. If you pass this request body, what the response you will get. So all those things are here. Once you trigger a request, you are going to get some response. So if you want to delete some inventory item, actually now the inventory item doesn't exist. So that's why you are getting an error. So here, this will define, okay, predefined requests are given so that it will ease your development work. So and many people can work on it like parallelly. So if I just share this in a collection file, you can import it into your system and then you can start using it. You don't need to do any curl call like this. Is it clear?
Yeah,
About
sure.
the usage of Postman? Hello, Sistia. Is there a way to generate Postman from Swagger file? I think there could be tools, but to develop from the Swagger, there are tools to develop what is that API itself. Like for example, there's something called Swagger generator. But what is the problem with this automated tools is that it won't give an exact way of like passing the parameters. Like for example, like the data way we are constructing, we may need to pass some actual data, right? For example, in the Swagger, you are given only a sample request structure. Let's say in this pet, so it is giving a sample request structure. This needs to be a string, this should be a number, this should be an array of elements, but it won't give you the actual values. So even if the tool will convert this from Swagger to a Postman collection, so it will not be able to give you an ideal data to generate it. So you need to again do some manual work. But there are ways to create an API itself. Again, that API won't be having a valid data. You need to modify it again. And this .env file, the .env file is that, see, first of all, we need to understand what is an environment variable. So in the initial days, when you want to, when you are creating a code, so what people will do is that anything you want to put into the code, they will hard code it. Let's say here we are using a configuration variable port. So if instead of, if there is no configuration variable, what you would do is that you will put like 3000, 5000 here. So if someone wants to run the API in a different port, they need to come and change the app.js file manually, and then they need to run it. So, but changing the code base for these kind of simple things will not allow you to think in a scalable like CI/CD pipelines, automated deployments. All these will become as a hindrance. So that is why we started using environment variables. So when there is an environmental variable, what we would do is that you need to set up, if you go, if in this place, if you type like print env, it will show what are the environmental variables set up within this what is that command prompt. So in Windows also we have the concept of environmental variable, like to add the paths and all. So similarly in Ubuntu also we have environment variables. So if to get something dynamically, we were using environmental variables. So what user would do earlier was type something like process.env.port. So we were doing like this. So what happens, whatever value is set in the environment variable, then that will be fetched and returned to you. But let's say you are having like hundreds of like environment variable. So then every time when you open a command prompt, you need to type it in the command prompt manually, or you need to have store in the what is it, bash rc file. So that was getting complicated. So that is why people come up with the concept of .env files. So let's say instead of MongoDB, different, if I want to pass a different port number, so port 3030, let's say. So what I will do is that I will enter my port number 3030 here, and you can restart the API. Then the port number will be detected dynamically. Let's say npm start. So you could check. So the Express server is listening on the port 3030 now. So had it been without environmental variables, so you need to hard code go and change it here. Or if there is no .env file, what you would do is first you need to type something like export port 3030. Then you need to do npm start. So this was creating complications. So this is like a complicated step, right? So every time there are 100 variables, you need to type 100 times, you 100 variables you need to set manually like this. So instead of that, using the .env files will simplify will simplify our workload by you will just enter the values here, and it will fetch dynamically from this .env file and set it in the environment. So that is the usage of .env file. Okay, thank you. So, is there any, okay, next question. Which is the best place for learning mean stack? As I'm beginning in Java, so documentation. Yeah, okay. So actually, if you ask me like how to get started, so if you are good at programming, so you can start the tutorials of like, okay, what is Mongo, Node.js, and then like what is Angular. How I learned myself in Topcoder when I started doing Topcoder. I don't know anything about like mean stack or like application development. See, I am a computer science graduate, but as soon as I graduated, when I was working in like a MNCs, I was doing like data informatica tools. I was using Cognos. There was no knowledge of programming at that point of time. But when after Chaluki started checking, after I started working on Topcoder, then since I am from programming background. I started learning basics from something like tutorials point or like Google tutorials. Okay, how Node.js work, what is JavaScript and all. But how you become best at is like participating in challenges and then like checking what the people are doing it. So when I was starting at the beginning, I started as a backend developer first. So when I started at the beginning, I don't even know what is called Lodash or what is configure, what is Express at all. Then first of all, I started trying to first, I started participating in challenges to check, okay, what the people are discussing, what is the requirement and all. Then I started downloading the winner code. If I participate and submit, and even if I don't pass, I can see the winner code. Or if I participate in the integration challenges, I can get the code of like front end and then back end. So that helped me to check out, okay, what the people have done, what is the requirement, how they have tried to implement it. So that is the way I have started becoming a best developer. But if you are starting for the programming itself, I would recommend to check out any good tutorials about like, okay, how programming works. Then once you know what is programming, then learning JavaScript or like Python or whatever language it is like cake work. First, we need to understand how programming works. Then once you know the logic, here the syntax is just going to be different. See, honestly speaking, even if I ask me suddenly, okay, what is the syntax, how I need to do something, let's say I need to, instead of using this library, if I want to do another library, I will do a Google search, because we don't need to remember all the syntax every time. We just need to know how I should do it. Like for example, if it is Node.js, okay, I should know there is a this library, I need to use it. The syntax and all those things you can learn from Google also, or like any search, because Stack Overflow also has a lot of solution. If let's say if you want to do something like remove authenticating using JWT, or authenticating using like API key, if you don't know, you can do a Google search and then like learn from it. So best place is to start the tutorials like from Google for basic. But once you want to become an expert, my recommendation would be to participate in challenges and then like understand what's actually going on, how the winner is writing code. So if you learn from the winner's code, you will become a better developer for sure. So that is how I was able to learn many things in Top Coder.
So guys, start competing.
Yeah.
and then you'll learn. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now what kind of challenges are we talking about? Like, so hi Vaibhav. So you can check out our Topcoder website, topcoder.com. Like,
I'll get the link in the chat. Chalo.
yeah, I thought how to open and show them this I think this link is interfering. So topcoder.com/challenges, you will be able to see like what is the current challenges we have. So we have development challenges in like multiple technology stacks. Like it could be in Angular, React, Node.js, .NET, Java, everything. So you can check out any challenges here, whichever is interesting for you, that you can you can start doing it. So initially there will be hiccups, but once you start participating, you will start loving it, and that community will always help you to grow further. So there are a lot of instances I have learned from my competitors. Then it's helped me to become successful in Top Coder. So you can also get started, and definitely you will be able to achieve the success in some time. So next question. Yeah. So this payment process, I think all these
We'll
can
take
we
it
can
up.
discuss in Slack, not actually
Yeah.
in the this
Let,
webinar.
let's stick to mean stack questions.
Mm. Yeah. So missed MongoDB configuration. So MongoDB, when you are using Docker, there is no configuration at all. You just need to like in this Docker Compose, you just need to say, okay, I need to pull up the MongoDB image and expose the port number 27017, because when the image is up and running, it is a separate operating system and mission altogether. So from that mission, you want to expose a port to your local system. So that is why we are exposing the port from this inside the system, which is running MongoDB, to our local host. So that you will be able to access it. So here the setup is just simple. Docker compose up by the instruction is there in the README document also. Yes, README document. So if you are in Docker, a local, if you're using Docker to set up the MongoDB, just navigate to the local directory and type Docker compose up there. It will bring up your MongoDB instance inside the Docker. Then using any MongoDB clients, you will be able to access it. and how to use 3.js in Angular. So there are, see, there are multiple methods to import any libraries. So there could be, if the library is already supported in Angular as a component, so that will be available in like ng, it will be available in npm. You can install it as a dependency, or if you want to use a library like what is that, 3.js, if it is not available as a dependency in npm, we need to check, okay, how they are doing it in the website. For example, 3.js in Angular, you can just search for it. So they will, how to you, it will tell you if there is a library already available or not. If it is not available, then you have to import them in a website manner. Like, okay, how you are inserting in a website, like in HTML page, if there is no Angular in a index.html file, how we will import our JavaScript, we need to do it that way. But I think that library seems to be available in the npm itself. You can check out the uh, steps in the Stack Overflow. See, your Google is the key. So there are many solutions, there are many problems. For all the problems, most of the problems, solutions are available in internet. Or if it is not available, you can post your questions or discuss in community, whatever it is. Somebody who knows will be able to help you. So even in our Slack channel, we have like dev general channels, so you can post your questions there as well. So if in case you are not able to find it online and you're finding it tough, so you can reach out for help there also. So the members, whoever is available, they will assist you for sure. Okay, yeah. So the way to response, limit the response is that pagination. So here in this API, we have not done pagination, but I can show you some, just the code. So this is this API we are using. I have set up a configuration here. Okay, what is the page, the default page size, and then like maximum how much you can request inside a page. So that we need to do it, and in the code, if you need to check, let me take the article service. So here, since we are using a JSON database here, we are doing the pagination ourselves, like slicing from the array. But if you are using MongoDB, we have parameters like limit, skip. So you can use those parameters to do the pagination. So pagination is very simple. We will be, we need to create a standards. So how you want to do the pagination, how you want to do the return the pagination response, whether it's going to be in the request response body itself, or is it going to be in the header. So there are different techniques for it. So you need to first come up with the approach of, okay, how you want to pass the parameters and how you want the UI to track it. Like, okay, in the, sometimes we will pass in the response headers. One second. So here in the response headers, we will pass something like link header, first page, next page, X total page numbers. So there are a lot of approaches for it. Did I miss any other question? And Santosh, thank you for a suggestion, like deploying the same app in the cloud. Yes, so there are a lot of ways to deploy in cloud. So it depends on like, okay, what is the cloud's platform you are choosing. For example, if you want to deploy in Heroku, the strategy is going to be a little different. If you want to deploy in like Azure or anything, then it's going to be different. But one thing I would like to tell you is that in the Angular application, once you build the file, it can be hosted using any static servers. Like it can be in Python or like it can be in Apache IIS, anything. Angular application, the Angular server is required only for development purposes. In a production build, you don't need Angular server at all. So, and depending on in Heroku, generally what we do is that, one second. So in Heroku, we generally create a file called server.js. So in the server.js, I will specify, okay, whenever whenever a request is coming up, serve the file from the dist marketplace or whatever is the my app name that I will mention. So you can also check in Google like how to deploy in Heroku. You have instructions given. So the concept here is that even though Angular, we have to develop in Angular, but the application can be deployed in any server. It can be deployed in any static server like Python, or like even it can be in Apache or IIS, whatever static server you want to use, you could use it. But depending on like the platform which you are choosing, the cloud platform, the steps is going to be different, because Heroku you can deploy it manually using like Heroku push to the Heroku push, or you can use something called CI/CD pipeline in GitLabs, which will help you to deploy. As soon as you push the code to GitLab, it will start a CI/CD pipeline to deploy into Heroku. So there are various techniques. So yeah, that's a good suggestion. We will think about it, like okay, which we'll think about like okay, which plat, or if you want to compare like different platforms, how to deploy between Heroku and then like AWS instances, we can cover that also. Thank you for suggestion. Any other questions? Did I miss something?
I just posted a DigitalOcean link, which might get you $100 credits if you want to use that. You can. So
yeah. CI/CD pipeline. Yeah. So now I will take up this question. So what is CI/CD pipeline? So let's start about like what was happening in like ancient time, or like let's say some 5-10 years ago. So when you create any application, so you need to maintain your code at some place. Okay. And the code needs to be deployed in a different server. So what generally people were doing earlier was, first they will push the code to Git or like any repository, or there are cases like where Tortoise, SVN. So I'm not sure like, okay, what happened even in older times. So when there were no CI/CD pipeline, people used to maintain their code in Git. And once they will log into server manually, they will stop the server, they will do a git pull, and whatever changes you want to do, they have to do it manually, like stopping the server, starting the server, making changes and all. But when CI/CD pipeline came into place, what happens is that as soon as you push your code to GitLab, it will start a pipeline to deploy it continuously. So that is why we call it as continuous integration and then continuous deployment. I can show you something. But, okay, but I'm just showing something from one of the project. But here you can see in pipeline, this is the private repository, so you won't be able to access, but I can show you what actually will happen. So what happens is that we have set up a Heroku CI/CD pipeline here. So there is a file called GitLab CI.yml. So every CI/CD provider will have their different type of files. For example, if you are using like Circle CI, then there is a different file. If you are using like Travis CI, there is a different method. I think I can take some example from Topcoder itself. Submissions API. So this is the API which you are using nowadays for submitting anything in the Topcoder. This is the API which I've created from scratch when I was participating in Topcoder challenges. End to end, I have created like the submission table reviews and all these things. Now there's a lot of enhancement going on. So this is the API which we have created. Now assume if there is no CI/CD pipeline, so the DevOps team or like any member who is taking care of it go and need to deploy this every time into a server. But since we are using CI/CD pipeline, so here you can see the .circle CI repository. So there they will mention the steps like, okay, how you need to deploy, how to install the dependencies, if it needs any other something like Git or Node.js, whatever it is. So we have defined some steps. Okay, whenever there is a commit pushed into the repository, you need to run these steps to update our API. So you don't need to do anything manually. So if you check the check mark here, it will go to Circle CI. So in the Circle CI, you can check actually what is actually happening. First, what we'll do in Circle CI is that, just a minute.
Sharad, do you think we can take deployment and CI/CD in more detail in the next webinar too? Like,
yeah, sure. Yes, correct. Yeah, that would be a better option. But so
we
here,
can extend it right now.
simple to conclude it. So the thing is that if you want to deploy automatically instead of doing a manual step. That is where CI/CD pipeline will come into pictures. So let's cover this in detail in the next webinar. So I can give you like more information, what are the different platforms available, how can you do one.
Got it. Sharad, do you have anything more to add for today's webinar?
I'm good from my end. So if there's any other questions, then.
Okay, guys, if there's any other questions, I think we are already running late. If there are any other questions, you can reach out to us in the forums or in the Slack channel as Sharad suggested, and we'll be able to help you.
In the Slack, I am available at the handle Sharath Kumar 92. So if you need any help, you can reach out to me there as well. Also, you could post in forums also. We are always here to help.
Right. And I think we'll be doing a follow-up webinar after seeing the interest of you guys, like so many questions you have from Sharath. So we'll probably plan a follow-up webinar, and we will come back and make sure that you are, trained more on this in the advanced fashion of deployment or CI/CDs, or in more towards Angular and how you can, do more operations. We will come back and we'll send you a follow-up email tomorrow, and we will make sure that you have the recording link and the forum link where you can ask your questions to Sharath, or even the Slack link. You can, if you're not joined yet. So thank you so much, Sharath, for taking our time. Really appreciate, and we will reach out to you for the next webinar date as soon as possible.
Thank you, Harshit, for this opportunity. This is my first time I'm doing a webinar. I'm very excited.
It was great, Sharath. It was great. I mean, you went slow. You answered every question. It went so well. Thank you so much for being patient and answering everything.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Hope
Thanks,
to
everyone.
see you again soon.
Yeah, everyone. Bye.